In the news recently, there's been a lot of talk about a video called From Hebrews to Negroes. And before then, there's been a lot of chatter. I think Kanye West may have said something about this topic as well, that purports that Black Americans are the original Jews. And there's a lot of things that kind of connect to this particular story. Some people, for example, would say the original Jews, like the people that were living in Israel, were black-skinned. And there is some reference to that in the Bible in some passages. I don't know if that's the case or not. One of the things that is less controversial is the fact that many of the Jews in the Bible did marry black people that were known to be black. Solomon, for example, they described his wife, one of his wives, as black. Moses did the same thing. He married an Ethiopian lady, and Joseph married an Egyptian. And there's a lot of instances like that. Now, it's true that in that part of the world at the time, in the Middle East, in the ancient Middle East, there were many groups of people that were black that lived in the Middle East in ancient times. The Jews may have been part of this group based on some of the references in the Bible. That is true. But it is not debatable that they did marry black people and they were intermarrying with different groups of people that were black back in those times. So that's definitely true. Other than that, over time, the people that used to live in Israel, many of them left Israel and lived in different countries. As you can call them immigrants or refugees or people that were displaced. And, you know, many of them lived in Europe. Many lived in the Arab countries. Some lived in Africa as well. So there were people, like there were some African tribes that, not a lot, not that many, but some that have Jewish origins. They say they are Jews. And there are some, like the Mandingos, for example, that people say are Jewish as well. In Nigeria, you have the Igbos. And even the Yorubas, there is a story about them being from a tribe in Canaan, which doesn't necessarily mean that they are claiming to be Jewish, but that's something I have seen according to some Islamic king back in the the old days. So you have that as well, and there is another group in Ethiopia that claim descent from Solomon, and they've been practicing Judaism and Jewish practices for thousands of years. So those are black people that are Jews, and there is no controversy about those guys. During the contemporary world as well, there were a lot of Jewish people around the world that that came from Europe doing business and had interactions with black people. Sometimes the black people may have been they are slaves, but because of that association, those black people embraced Judaism and practice as Jews. And more recently, and this is something that would have been happening before now too, but there are people that may be a Jewish woman that married an African person, or a black person have children, those children will be considered Jewish based on the Jewish custom of, inheritance or lineage tracing through the mother. So it is, if a Jewish man marries someone that is not Jewish, the children are not technically considered to be Jewish. But if a Jewish woman marries somebody from another race, the children are considered Jewish. So that way you also find a lot of people that are black people that are also Jews. But the controversy is the contention that it looks to many observers that there are some that are claiming that all black Americans are descended from the original people of Israel. Whether or not the original people of Israel were black doesn't have anything to do with whether or not black Americans are the descendants of the original Jews. Because, for example, let me give you an example. Let's say the original inhabitants of Israel were black. That's 2,000-3,000 years ago. Many of them migrated to other countries, married other people, so that today they may not look black, but they are still descended from the original folks from there. So you can't just say because the original people over there were black, it means every black American is a Jew. And then the other thing is, if the black Americans are Jews, what about the black Canadians? Or the black Mexicans, the black people in Argentina, Ecuador, or in Africa? Like I said, there are people in Africa that have claims that they are Jewish, right? But all Africans can't say they are Jews. Because even if you look at the history of the Jewish people, according to themselves, they said they migrated 70 in number into Egypt, lived there for 400 years, and then left. And by the time they left, there were a lot more. I think they said it was 600,000. But if they migrated into Africa and lived in Africa and then left, when did the Africans become Jews? Before the Jews came to live there or after? So sometimes you just have to look at some of these things, and I think that the more experienced and knowledgeable people need to come and talk to folks and let them know the nuances in this situation. Are there people that are black and Jewish? Yes. Are there black Jews? Yes. Are all black Americans Jews? I think that's a little tricky to say, because if you believe all black Americans are Jews, then you have to say all Africans are Jews. And we all know that there has been Africans before there were Jews. And the other thing that you hear is that some people believe that during slavery, that only the Jews were taken from Africa. But we all know, if you actually study some of the historical records, sometimes the people that are kidnapping people and selling them get kidnapped themselves. How do you tell the difference? And these are folks that are fighting each other. So let's just assume, oh, you're just trying to sell all the Jews to the white people, right? But what happens is, if the other group wins the war, they sell their prisoners too. So there's really no way to say it's only one group that got taken as slaves. Everybody got affected. If you lived on the western coast of Africa back then. And so almost every African tribe is represented as people that were captured in the Western Africa. So that's what I'm saying. So there's no way you can say, oh, it only took the people that you may consider to be Jewish descendants. That's definitely not true. Because if that was true, what about the ones that didn't get taken? So are they no longer Jews anymore? The ones that are still over there in Africa? Did they stop being Jewish because they didn't get taken to America? So, and I always try to say this. My own feeling is that a lot of times there's a tendency for people to be trying to affiliate themselves with other groups and cultures. And I think the reason why is that there's a feeling that my own culture is inferior. I don't have anything to be proud of. So let me try to say I'm something else. I'm Native American. I'm Arab. I'm Moorish. I'm Egyptian. And I'm a Jew. That way, I feel better. But you see, when you look at the history of the Jews, they actually lived in Africa for a long time. And it wasn't just before the Exodus. They lived in Africa even after that. There were many people that were going back and forth. And Jesus Christ, when he was born, spent 12, I don't know how many years, but he was in Egypt to escape the king in Israel. He lived there. Even the Muslims, when they started their religion, initially Prophet Muhammad sent a lot of his followers to live in Africa. The scientists claim that human beings originated from Africa. Some people believe that civilization started in Africa. And a lot of the things that we come to associate as civilization and ideas, the dates and time, cooking, all of those things, a lot of these things originate from there. That there is no reason to want to be anything else unless you either don't know your history, because a lot of people talk about history and claim to know history, but they have not really been reading anything. They've not actually been studying things. When you present them with a book, they are not interested. They would rather watch a YouTube video from somebody that didn't go to college to study any of these things, didn't really do any real research in actual accredited scholarship, and just put opinions out there, opinions that are not based on fact. And this is my advice is, if you don't want to read books, you don't really like to know about historical events and stuff, stay out of the conversation. Don't talk about black people being Jews or whatever any other groups that you want to say, Native American, without actually studying the texts. Because if you have interest in it, then go and study it, learn about it, actually investigate yourself, real investigation. Otherwise, you may as well just let it go. If you don't want to study something, don't talk about it. Especially when it's a controversial subject like this. There are people that live in the US, for example, that actually are living lives as Jewish people. And when you say that they are fake Jews without having any real knowledge about the subject and actually studied about the subject, it just doesn't look too good. And it just causes more division and hatred amongst people that don't necessarily have any reason to hate each other as such. It's not like you're fighting for the same spaces. You're not living in the same neighborhoods most of the time, or trying to fight for the same jobs. They're not trying to marry your your children. That's one thing you can be rest assured of. So there's no real reason why anybody wants to be making statements like that without some actual facts. And the other thing is, if you are like in a minority group somewhere, if you have any problems with the system, especially if you're not talking about the dominant society, sometimes you are better off just maybe learning from people that succeed and trying to replicate what they do. We all know the Jewish people in America are a minority group. They are not that many, and to the extent that they have succeeded, is a lot of it has to do with cooperation and working together. Well, it's up to you to do the same thing. Work together, cooperate. Maybe you'll find success as well. Not to blame somebody else that is able to cooperate. We all know that if let's say me and my friends, we are able to cooperate and create something, and we make a lot of money out of it, we're probably going to try and protect our interests. And it will look to somebody else that I'm trying to be manipulative or whatever, but all it is I'm trying to protect my interests. Everybody does that. The only people that may not be doing that are people that are not working together with anybody. If you're not working together with anybody, then you have nothing to protect. And that's one thing that I feel like we need to really learn and start doing. Because if we were doing those things, there will be less reason for us to be, having to complain about things like that. Like, for example, maybe we need to have a bank, actual big bank, even if it's just one, that can service people of color in the U.S. There's nothing wrong with that. Just one. One big major hospital, top tier, that is state of the art. Just one in the U.S. Nothing wrong with that. A major record label that can produce music. Just one. People that have money put it together. Things like that. If we did that, there may not be as much of a reason to, say things that might cause that kind of division, and people losing their jobs, losing their money. And that's my advice and hope, that people start to work together and make things happen for themselves. Thank you, guys.